from the basics of the virus to vaccine locations. Operators at the state's 3 211 call centers in Lafayette, Monroe, and New Orleans handled 290,002 calls in 2020, up 220% from call volume in 2019. Of those calls, more than 53% were people seeking COVID-19 information, and roughly 20% were hurricane survivors seeking storm help, including after Hurricanes Laura and Delta battered Southwest Louisiana, Louisiana 211 said in a news release. Sarah Berthelot, President and CEO of Louisiana Association of United Ways and the Louisiana 211 statewide disaster and project lead, said many of the calls have been from older adults, people with disabilities, and people without seamless internet connections. There also was a large volume of new callers, people who haven't needed 211's assistance before, who are now experiencing instability or who are caring for family members during the pandemic and need new forms of assistance, she said. Research suggests it takes an average of 8 calls to get basic information about services without 211. Berthelot said the network is grateful to ease some of that strain on residents, especially in this past year, when the fear and anxiety in people's voices has been clear on calls. Quote, in many cases, 211 is able to listen to a caller and provide a solution to a need that perhaps a caller may not know how to ask for, end quote, Berthelot said. Quote, the 211 teams don't just listen to what the 211 caller presents, but they listen in a way that allows them to surface up other forms of help that the caller might need to address the root cause of what they're experiencing, end quote. Berthelot said the 3 call centers can exceed 100 operators on any given day as the network analyzes call demand and other data to prevent long wait times. Louisiana 211 also uses a callback system in which callers can leave their number and receive a return call from the next available operator, rather than sitting on the line, Berthelot said. The call service also has, at minimum, 8 full-time coordinators who work at the call centers and partner United Way agencies to ensure all resources are hyperlocal and as up-to-date as possible by working with municipal, parish, and state governments and collaborating with local nonprofits and support organizations, she said. Sometimes getting people the information they need requires getting creative. In 2020, Louisiana 211 offered a texting service in partnership with the Louisiana Department of Health. Residents texted LA COVID, LACOVID, to 898-211 to receive links to important COVID-19 information like vaccine signups, testing site locations, and the curated Q&As about the virus and mitigation efforts. The service was used by more than 93,000 people in 2020, a release said. Nika Meir, call center director for 232 Help, which serves 10 parishes in the Acadiana region, said another benefit of speaking to a live trained operator is that call workers build rapport with callers and can determine the needs people aren't expressing, or maybe don't realize they have. Often people don't know how to ask for what they need or don't know that help is available, she said. Quote, a lot of times people are not aware of the different resources that are available, and without that awareness, of course, you're going to have even more difficulty locating the things you need, end quote, Meir said. Meir and 232 Help Executive Director Chris Roy estimated their call center's call volume has at least doubled since this time last year. The Lafayette Center daily employs between 5 and 6 operators, up from 3 this time last year. At its peak, 14 to 15 operators were working at once, they said. Meir said she's been struck by how the pandemic has increased the complexity of people's needs. Whereas a family may have previously called seeking food assistance, now they're seeking food assistance, housing assistance, and clothing. It's been a snowball effect, she said. Quote, the pandemic has really pushed people. They're having elevated stress levels, and pretty much it's the entire 360-degree scope of an individual or family that's affected by COVID, end quote, Roy said. Quote, it's not just a disease, it's going to affect your ability to pay your utility bills. So we see this cascading effect. The pandemic definitely exacerbated a lot of people who were already on the economic margins, end quote. The 232 Help staffers said, unfortunately, help isn't always immediately available to callers, but operators take detailed notes on unmet needs while keeping caller information confidential. The information is used for weekly reports that can help inform resource direction for local governments, United Way agencies, anyone they can get the data in front of, Roy said. Resources are scarce and nonprofit and service organizations are strained, so knowing what the picture of need looks like is critical, he said. While the goal of 211 is to offer referrals and information, having a person to speak with personally has its own benefits. Many people have been dramatically isolated by the pandemic, Roy said. It's a universal experience to desire to be heard and understood, he said. Quote, when people are vulnerable and feel like they really, really have a problem, talking with someone gives them great relief. We've heard on the phones over and over again how grateful people are to talk to a live person who can help them in that moment. That's come through loud and clear, end quote, Berthelot said. The Youngsville Police Department said Thursday. Kimberly Wellman Rich, 36, was arrested Thursday morning on counts of felony carnal knowledge of a juvenile, indecent behavior with a juvenile, encouraging or contributing to the delinquency of a child, and contributing to the delinquency of a juvenile. Her husband, Jeffrey Rich, is accused of knowing about the abuse and was booked on counts of accessory after the fact to felony carnal knowledge of a juvenile and contributing to the delinquency of a juvenile, a department statement said. Youngsville Police Chief Ricky Boudreaux said Wellman Rich's bail is set at $72,500 and Rich's bail is set at $10,000. Boudreaux said an investigation into the couple began after the agency was forwarded a complaint from a Louisiana Department of Children and Family Services intake office on January 22nd. An anonymous caller alleged to staff at the State Department that Wellman Rich was having a sexual relationship with a foreign exchange student in her care. Through interviews with witnesses and evidence collection, investigators determined Wellman Rich abused the student beginning when he was 15 until he was removed from her household on January 26 by the Lafayette Parish School System and his foreign exchange host program, Boudreaux said. It was not specified by law enforcement how long the inappropriate relationship lasted. The legal age of consent in Louisiana is 17. Investigators also determined the couple supplied the teen with marijuana and allowed him to smoke and drink alcohol in their home. The school system issued a statement Thursday morning confirming that school officials are aware of the allegations of inappropriate behavior. The school system is cooperating with law enforcement, according to the statement. School officials would not further comment on the matter. According to the Parish School Board's policy manual, sponsoring exchange agencies must be in good standing with the Council for Standards on International Educational Travel and be a United States Information Agency designated organization with a local representative within 50 miles of Lafayette Parish. Some basic expectations are outlined for the sponsoring agency and host family around academic involvement, and the school system, quote, expects exchange organizations and host families to provide proper and responsible supervision of international exchange students, end quote. The policy states only 25 exchange students will be accepted into the district each year because each student attends tuition free at the expense of the school system and state taxpayers. Additional details about the logistics of the exchange program were not available from the school system before press time Thursday. Hearts of Hope Center for Sexual Trauma issued a warning Thursday about how to spot grooming behaviors in child sexual abuse cases in light of several recent child sex crimes in Acadiana. Grooming behavior often includes isolating the victim, gaining the victim's and community's trust to remain undetected, and becoming physically affectionate or being otherwise hands-on with the victim, the center said. Quote, it is important for parents, caregivers, and community members to understand the grooming process. It is every adult's responsibility to keep kids safe, end quote, the center leaders wrote. Arch. Everyone should have shelter, and the next few days will be extremely cold. Due to COVID-19 and concerns for community spread, there has been a dramatic increase in available shelter beds. That means many experiencing homelessness may have no other option than to sleep on the street. Throughout this pandemic, Acadiana Regional Coalition on Homelessness and Housing has been able to utilize local hotel and motel rooms as a temporary housing solution. From there, case managers help our fellow Acadians transition to permanent housing. Arch is very proud of their success in keeping those they serve safe from COVID-19 and on their way to long-term stability. However, the number of homeless is growing, and Arch needs your help to get our neighbors out of the cold and into warm, safe housing. Can you help today? If so, go to archacadiana.org. Or if you would prefer to give by check, please mail to Arch, P.O. Box 3936, Lafayette, Louisiana, 70502. Acadiana News continued. Art Spark puts artists center stage. Program offers grants to 8 area performers, by Simone Graham, staff writer. Kai Gayton had just finished a performance at the Acadiana Center for the Arts when she found a flyer in her tip bucket. Instead of putting money into her bucket, someone who had watched the neo-soul funk singer perform had put in the flyer about the Art Spark program in Lafayette that supports individual artists in Acadiana. The Abbeville native did not give it much attention until a friend sent a link to her on how to apply. So she did. Fast forward months later, and Gayton was among the 8 artists who received grants ranging from $1,000 to $5,000 through the program administered by the Center and the Lafayette Economic Development Authority last year. The program offers grants to area artists, especially those with limited opportunities, regardless of age or point in their career, to expand their bodies of work as a professional and offer outreach to the community. Gayton, whose stage name is Kai, said she used the funding to help with her visual project set to release this week. It includes a YouTube series that will feature live performances, and the ACA will present the start of Gayton's project at the Art Walk event Friday, she said. It will also showcase Gayton's versatile side of her singing in French. I sing and write in French as well, said Gayton, a former French teacher. That's part of what I would like to keep alive as far as representing the culture of Louisiana. It's her latest display of talent that dates back to when she was 10 years old. As part of a Creole family of musicians, Gayton, along with her family and church members, had evacuated for a hurricane, and the church held a showcase to pass the time. Gayton performed in the showcase, and it was then that she, along with others in the attendance, discovered her talent. Quote, I always knew this is what I'd be doing full time, but I never tried to force it, end quote, she said. Quote, after I graduated college and moved around, it just kind of fell into place, end quote. Gayton, who also taught African American studies, art history, and a wellness class, began performing about 2 years ago when a friend, also a singer, vouched for her first show at the Worst Beer Garden in downtown Lafayette. Since then, she has been performing and doing local shows. Quote, that is why I'm super excited about this project, end quote, she said. Quote, it will be the first full body of work that I'll have documented. I'm just excited to have somewhere for it to live. My passion for music is derived from the art of music itself. Music is a living, breathing entity that exists always. That, coupled with a clear way of where I'm supposed to be, is why the fire stays lit, end quote. Adrian Guidry was another recipient of the program's funding last year. As a jewelry artist and owner of Adorn Jewelry, 100 East Vermilion Street, Guidry has been making jewelry for 15 years. She used her Art Spark grant to become certified as a precious metal clay artist, a longtime goal of hers. The Lafayette native went to school at the Gemological Institute of America and combined her knowledge of art, artists, and jewelry to become a jewelry designer. Quote, there's not enough hours in the day to make all the jewelry that's in my head, said Guidry, who started her business about 9 years ago after leaving the corporate world. Quote, I feel like I'm always creating, end quote. Guidry started her business in a larger shop on Westmark Boulevard, and she was there for 5 years. 4 years ago, she said she decided to move downtown and reduce the staff to focus on making jewelry. In December, Guidry held an art show that highlighted new techniques she was working on, and it nearly sold out. She since has been accepted to teach a continuing education course on jewelry design at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. Quote, "It was absolutely because of the grant that the art show took place," she said. Quote, "I think had we not had the challenges we had this year, it would have been so much more," end quote. Deadline to apply for the 2021 grants is March 5th. To register, visit bit.ly/ArtSparkACA. That's ARTSPARKACA. Acadiana virus decline continues, by Ben Myers, staff writer. Acadiana's recovery from a prolonged seasonal coronavirus outbreak regained steam in the first week of February, with test volumes far outpacing new confirmed cases. COVID-19 hospitalizations continued to decline at a consistent rate. Cases as a percentage of tests and hospitalizations remain elevated by historical standards. At currents of decline, the 7-parish region will need a few more weeks to reach the levels of late spring and early fall when the virus was at its weakest. Through February 3rd, the proportion of tests yielding new cases over 7 days was 5.3%, a strong improvement from the 7.1% recorded on January 27th. That mark had been stuck in the 7% range for nearly 2 weeks, which was an improvement over the 13% rate seen in the first days of the year, but also raised the question of how durable the recovery would be. The region's current case-to-test ratio is the lowest since early November, when the fall spike was getting underway. Yet it is still above the 3 to 4% range of September and October. It is difficult to predict if the next weekly report on February 17th will show continued momentum, because computer problems have impaired the state's recent daily reports. The weekly reports allocate test results to dates that tests were taken on a 7-day lag. The region's COVID-19 hospital census as of February 9th was 103, a 21% decline from 7 days prior. It marked 30 straight days of week-over-week hospitalization declines and 5 straight days with declines exceeding 20%. Still, the number of inpatients on February 9th was double that on October 9th during the fall lull. The state's calculation of positivity, which factors all positive tests as a percentage of tests, not just those that yield new cases, also improved from 7.6% to 6.1% as of February 3rd, the most recent date available. Acadia Parish remained the only parish in the region eligible for limited bar reopening, which is allowed only when parishes are below 5% positivity for 2 weeks, as determined by the Louisiana Department of Health. Briefs from staff and wire reports. Weekly jobless claims decline in Louisiana. New unemployment claims across Louisiana dipped again last week. There were 7,476 new unemployment claims filed last week, down from 10,376 1 week before, according to the U.S. Department of Labor data released on Thursday. There also were another 3,029 new claims filed last week for the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, a special federal program for the self-employed, such as independent contractors, compared with 3,990 claims 1 week before. There were 60,684 continuing employment claims across the state for the week ending January 30th, the latest state data available, and another 123,565 federal program claims continuing. The state paid $95.3 million for benefits for the week ending January 30th. All 30,000 claims in the Louisiana Workforce Commission's backlog pending identity verification since the beginning of January has been cleared. Financing obtained for LNG terminal. Venture Global LNG obtained a $500 million loan from a group of major banks as the company prepares to make a final investment decision for its proposed $8.5 billion Plaquemine LNG liquefied natural gas export terminal south of New Orleans. The Arlington, Virginia-based company's loan is for the construction activities before a final decision to move forward is made. The Plaquemine LNG project has been navigating the federal regulatory process and securing local permits. The company anticipates construction could start by the end of 2021. Today in History by the Associated Press. Today is Friday, February 12th, the 43rd day of 2021. There are 322 days left in the year. Today's highlight in history: on February 12, 1973, Operation Homecoming began as the first release of American prisoners of war from the Vietnam conflict took place. On this date, in 1809, Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, was born in a log cabin in Hardin, now LaRue County, Kentucky. In 1818, Chile officially proclaimed its independence more than 7 years after initially renouncing Spanish rule. In 1909, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People was founded. In 1912, Puyi, the last emperor of China, abdicated, marking the end of the Qing dynasty. In 1914, groundbreaking took place for the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. A year later on this date, the cornerstone was laid. In 1924, George Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue premiered in New York. In 1959, the redesigned Lincoln penny, with an image of the Lincoln Memorial replacing 2 ears of wheat on the reverse side, went into circulation. In 1999, the Senate voted to acquit President Bill Clinton of perjury and obstruction of justice. In 2000, Hall of Fame football coach Tom Landry, who'd led the Dallas Cowboys to 5 Super Bowls, died in Irving, Texas at age 75. In 2003, the UN Nuclear Agency declared North Korea in violation of international treaties, sending the dispute to the Security Council. In 2019, Mexico's most notorious drug lord, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, was convicted in New York of running an industrial-scale smuggling operation. A jury whose members' identities were kept secret as a security measure had deliberated for 6 days. Guzman is serving a life sentence at Federal Supermax Prison Facility in Florence, Colorado. 10 years ago, thousands of Algerians defied government warnings and dodged barricades in their capital, demanding democratic reforms. Demonstration continued in Yemen as well. 5 years ago, Pope Francis, while en route to Mexico, embraced Patriarch Kirill during a stopover in Cuba in the first ever meeting between a pontiff and the head of the Russian Orthodox Church. 1 year ago, Holland America Line said a cruise ship, the MS Westerdam, which had been barred from docking by 4 governments because of fears of the coronavirus, would arrive the next day in Cambodia. In Japan, officials confirmed 39 new cases on a cruise ship that had been quarantined at Yokohama, bringing the total number of cases on the Diamond Princess to 174. A second case of coronavirus was confirmed in the U.S. among evacuees from China. The person had been aboard a flight from Wuhan that arrived the previous week at a military base in Southern California. Today's birthdays. Movie director Costa Gavras is 88. Basketball Hall of Famer Bill Russell is 87. Actor Joe Don Baker is 85. Author Judy Blume is 83. Former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak is 79. Country singer Mo Bandy is 77. Actor Maude Adams is 76. Actor Cliff DeYoung is 75. Actor Michael Ironside is 71. Rock musician Steve Hackett is 71. Rock singer Michael McDonald is 69. Actress Joanna Kearns is 68. Actor Zach Grenier is 67. Actor talk show host Arsenio Hall is 65. Actor John Michael Higgins is 58. Actor Raphael Sbarge is 57. Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh is 56. Actor Christine Elise is 56. Actor Josh Brolin is 53. Singer Chynna Phillips is 53. Rock musician Jim Cregan of the Bare Naked Ladies is 51. Actor Jesse Spencer is 42. Rapper Gucci Mane is 41. Actor Sarah Lancaster is 41. Actor Christina Ricci is 41. Actor Jennifer Stone is 28. The Zodiac. Aquarius, January 20th to February 19th. Make your point clear when dealing with a friend or relative, but don't let your temper escalate. How well you deal with controversy will be crucial. Pisces, February 20th to March 20th. Focus on change. The effort you put in to improve your lifestyle, financial situation, and professional circumstances will help you achieve your goal. Aries, March 21st through April 19th. Be secretive about the changes you want to make. Get involved in conversations or projects that will enlighten you about something you want to pursue. Romance will brighten your day. Taurus, April 20th to May 20th. Don't take anything or anyone for granted. If you want to get things done, work alone. Expect to be contradicted if you get into a debate. Be amicable. Gemini, May 21st through June 20th. Expect a mix-up due to misinterpretation. You'll have to be articulate to ensure you get your point across and your requests handled adequately. Leave nothing to chance. Cancer, June 21st to July 22nd. Take your time, look at every angle, and make changes based on what's best for you. How you go about your responsibilities will tie into an opportunity that comes your way. Leo, July 23rd to August 22nd. Be sure that the changes you want to make are financially sound. Don't jeopardize your position or reputation to impress someone. Opportunities exist, but picking the right one will be crucial. Virgo, August 23rd to September 22nd. You'll have plenty of innovative ideas. Develop a partnership that will make it easier for you to reach your goal. Do some research in order to find out what's trending. Libra, September 23rd to October 23rd. Overspending will be tempting. Crunch the numbers before you decide to take on debt. Look for a way to get what you want for less, and you will avoid an argument. Scorpio, October 24th to November 22nd. You'll be faced with opposition, discord, and uncertainty if you have neglected to take care of personal matters. Stop procrastinating. Start taking care of unfinished business. Sagittarius, November 23rd to December 21st. Don't let someone get in your way. Focus on your goal and surround yourself with like-minded people. An opportunity to make money doing something you enjoy will come your way. Capricorn, December 22nd to January 19th. Put time and effort into home, family, and positive adjustments that will bring you closer to your loved ones. Fixing up your surroundings and adding to your comfort and convenience are favored. Acadiana continued. Lafayette man facing more charges in Capitol riot, by Ben Myers, staff writer. The Lafayette man who participated in the January 6th riot inside the U.S. Capitol is facing 2 additional federal charges. Vaughn Gordon, who has publicly admitted being part of the mob that stormed the Capitol, is now facing 4 charges: entering and remaining in a restricted building, disorderly conduct within a restricted building, violent entry and disorderly conduct in a Capitol building, parading, demonstrating, or picketing in a Capitol building. The combined maximum prison sentence for those charges is 3 years. The charges related to violent entry and disorderly conduct were added Tuesday after the case moved from the Western District of Louisiana to the federal court in Washington, D.C. Gordon also participated in a protest outside the Louisiana State Capitol on January 9th, and he told the crowd that he had entered the U.S. Capitol with a crowd of supporters of then-President Donald Trump. The rioters aimed to disrupt certification of Joe Biden's victory in the November presidential election. Quote, "You're looking at what by mandate is a felon because I entered the Capitol during the riot," end quote, Gordon told the crowd. Quote, "I say riot because that's what it was," end quote. Facebook posts, a story in the Advocate, and a witness were used by the FBI to identify Vaughn as one of the participants in the January 6th riot. An FBI agent, Andrew Berger, cited Gordon's comment at the Louisiana protest as well as Gordon's social media posts from inside the U.S. Capitol in a statement of facts. Berger wrote that on January 6th, photographs posted on a Facebook page for Vaughn Gordon appeared to have been taken inside the rotunda of the U.S. Capitol. Berger was unable to access the photos, he wrote, but someone captured them and provided them to law enforcement. The selfie photos show Gordon outside the Capitol wearing goggles and inside the Capitol with the goggles around his neck. He was wearing a backward cap bearing USA with the caption, "Live inside the Congress building. It was worth the tear gas," the affidavit states. Gordon was initially booked on January 14th and released on personal recognizance. Staff writer Paul Kobler contributed to this report. State. Shell plans to cut oil production. Louisiana braces for impact beyond 700 job refinery closure by Kristen Mosbrucker, staff writer. Royal Dutch Shell, with major operations in the Gulf of Mexico, says it will trim its oil output by up to 2% annually as part of a long-term plan that is already resulting in the closure of its 700-job refinery in Convent. Shell, one of the multinationals that has defined the oil industry, is slowly turning away from the fossil fuel that made its fortune over the decades, but also has contributed to an urgency facing governments and companies to reduce climate warming emissions. Shell said Thursday that its production of oil peaked in 2019 and will fall steadily as it attempts an ambitious pivot toward less polluting forms of energy. Shell unveiled new plans for reaching its goal of being carbon neutral by 2050 that includes a 1% to 2% drop annually in oil output, which local experts said Thursday could have a gradual impact on operations in the Gulf and the state's efforts to adapt to new forms of energy. Quote, "Those big floating facilities will continue to be out there, but as production from existing facilities decline, you could see a significant drop-off by 2050, especially if there are no new leases and nobody is looking for new oil fields," end quote, said Eric Smith, Associate Director of Tulane University's Energy Institute. Shell said in a statement, its gradual drop in oil output will include divestments and natural decline. Quote, "Still, our priority is to extend the life of our most competitive assets in our heartland basins, including in the Gulf of Mexico, where our assets generate the cash to support our dividend and fund Shell's transformation," end quote, the company said. Quote, "The goal for our upstream business is to make it more focused, more resilient, and more competitive to sustain material cash delivery into the 2030s," end quote. In the long term, Louisiana is well positioned for a transition toward greener fuel production and carbon sequestration efforts using its existing energy infrastructure, Smith said. Refineries, such as the Convent facility, could be converted to produce cleaner fuel sources in the coming decades. Shell is eliminating 7 of its 13 refineries internationally and aims to cut production of gasoline and diesel fuel by 55% over the next decade. The company's Louisiana subsidiary already is in the process of closing its Convent oil refinery, which employs 700 company workers and 400 contractors after failing to sell the facility. Shell has said it is consolidating its assets into 6 energy and chemical parks. The survivors include the Norco refinery near New Orleans, in conjunction with Shell's chemical complex in Geismar. The goal is for the refineries to be more integrated with the chemical complexes and produce more biofuels, hydrogen, and synthetic fuels. Shell also plans to increase production of liquefied natural gas. Quote, "Our plan is to retain a meaningful presence in Louisiana by way of our integrated refining and chemicals sites at Norco and Geismar, our midstream infrastructure assets, branded retail presence, Gulf of Mexico operations, and our offices in New Orleans," end quote, Shell said in its statement. Shell's website says it operates 9 deep water production hubs, numerous subsea production systems, and one of the largest contracted drilling rig fleets in the Gulf of Mexico. It also is part owner of one producing project in the Gulf. Shell employs 1,600 workers for its Gulf operation, which produces 150 million barrels of oil each year, about half of Shell's total oil and gas output. It would take significant capital to shut down production from its offshore portfolio, so what's more likely is that the company may not continue to invest, especially if there is a long-term moratorium on new leases for drilling in federal waters, experts said. Even so, Louisiana is likely to still have refineries in the coming decades, especially for jet fuel and diesel products, which are not projected to transition to all-electric vehicles as quickly as consumer vehicles. Quote, "The refinery industry is going to have to adjust," said Greg Upton, an associate research professor at LSU's Center for Energy Studies. Quote, "In a world where you achieve decarbonization, there is still definitely room for the oil and gas industry, but it may look different than it looks today," end quote. That would likely mean fewer jobs and many people who retire not being replaced with new workers. Overall employment in oil and gas has been on the decline for decades as production has become more efficient through advanced technology. Shell's long-term plan is part of a wider push, particularly among European oil companies, to overhaul their operations to reduce carbon emissions blamed for global warming while still making money. Louisiana Economic Development is tasked to retain and recruit more businesses to continue investing in Louisiana despite the market contraction in oil and gas. The state is focused on the transition of the energy industry, with the governor creating a climate initiatives task force to tackle its future. Louisiana Economic Development has a, quote, "strong relationship," end quote, with Shell, according to the state agency. Quote, "LED will continue to support existing oil, gas, and petrochemical facilities and work to enhance their competitiveness," end quote, said Don Pearson, secretary of the agency. Quote, "Those efforts continue in a way that leverages Louisiana's assets, including existing sites and workforce, and seizes opportunities for projects that make sense as a bridge to a lower carbon future," end quote. Quote, "The oil industry has carved up our protective wetlands with its pipelines and canals, exacerbated storms with its greenhouse gases, destroyed people's property values by moving in next door, and polluting relentlessly and increased the cancer risk in our state," said Ann Rolfus, director of the Louisiana Bucket Brigade, an environmental group. Quote, "Addressing these harms has to start somewhere, so maybe these are first steps," end quote. Associated Press writer Danica Kirka contributed to this report. Employees brought into insurance contract TIF. Clinics Group begs state workers to intervene in the feud, by Mark Ballard, Capitol Bureau editor. The head of a statewide group of walk-in clinics emailed about 228,000 state employees, retirees, and their dependents across Louisiana, as well as all 144 legislators, trying to enlist their support in a $40 million contract dispute with the state. Mary N. Smith, president of Access Today Health, based in Bossier City, asked subscribers to most of the health insurance plans offered to those with government jobs to call the state office of group benefits and their legislator to ask why would the new OGB management seek to cancel a program that allows visits to no appointment clinics without having to come out of pocket for co-pays and deductibles. She asked for a legislative hearing. Help us get one. We all deserve this chance to be heard and get our whys answered, Smith wrote. The reason why, said Commissioner of Administration Jay Dardenne, is the state is paying $40 million a year and not receiving what Access Today Health promised, even though the clinics had about 50,000 visits. Quote, we're supposed to be saving money, receiving a return on investment, end quote, Dardenne said. Quote, we're not. It doesn't make sense, end quote. The number of responses regarding Smith's email was so overwhelming on Thursday that Dardenne said he needed to write a memo to legislators to explain the situation. Allied Health and the state entered into a contract in July 2019 to allow members of Office of Group Benefits-backed insurance plans to receive primary care services at Access Today Health clinics. Access Today Health has almost 80 clinics statewide, including Acadiana Access Health in Lafayette, Patient Plus Urgent Care in Baton Rouge, and Doctors After Hours in Harvey, Metairie, and New Orleans. Quote, the contract was premised on saving money for OGB, Dardenne said. The contract guaranteed a return on investment and included a surety bond backing Access Today's health performance. This matter is likely destined for litigation, Dardenne wrote lawmakers. OGB's preference is to maintain for its members the benefits offered by Access Health, end quote. If the Allied Health contract is terminated, it won't affect the other health plans the state offers its employees. When David Couvillon took over as the chief executive officer of the Office of Group Benefits on October 21st, he began reviewing contracts and found that Access Today Health wasn't delivering anywhere near $40 million worth of services as it was contractually obligated to do, Dardenne said. Office of Group Benefits and Access Today Health began negotiations but failed to get anywhere. The state wants Access Today Health to accept a lower payment. When talks failed, the state served notice last week that it intended to terminate the contract April 9th. Quote, unfortunately, the Access Today Health program has not performed as expected, end quote, the state agency wrote in a memo. Subscribers are still allowed to go to primary care and urgent care clinics, but after April 9th, they will be charged copays, coinsurance, and deductibles. Smith did not return calls Thursday seeking comment, but in her email to state workers, Smith alluded to a possible COVID-19 pandemic reason. She noted in her email that the pandemic, quote, limited your visits from March to present. Hospitals were overwhelmed, citizens were told to stay home, those with symptoms were told to stay home unless they worsened, and instructions from the CDC, the Federal Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, changed daily, end quote. The state in April 2020 required paperwork from Access Today Health in a request for federal relief funds, but Smith wrote she was never informed about the results of that application. Also, other vendors with the Office of Group Benefits, quote, was granted a COVID-19 contract waiver except for Access Today Health, end quote, Smith wrote. Smith noted that state employees gave the clinics a 92% satisfaction rating. Supreme Court extends statewide trial moratorium by Joe Guyon Jr., staff writer. There will be no jury trials statewide through March 31st due to the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, the Louisiana Supreme Court said Thursday in extending a previous trial moratorium. The High Court on January 12th halted all jury trials until March 1st. Jury trials currently in progress may continue, and grand jury proceedings are not suspended by Thursday's order, the court said. Beginning April 1st, local courts will be responsible for evaluating and determining whether jury trials can be conducted safely within their jurisdictions, the Supreme Court said. Safety protocols, including strict social distancing and mask mandates, must be enforced to ensure the safety of all participants, the High Court cautioned. Criminal trials involving defendants who are in custody should take priority over all other matters when the moratorium is lifted, the court added, and potential jurors who cite pandemic-related health concerns should be excused. Last year, the Supreme Court imposed a months-long trial moratorium after Governor John Bel Edwards issued a statewide stay-at-home order March 22nd in an effort to halt the spread of the novel coronavirus. Lower courts statewide did not hold in-person trials until the summer. Sports. Ready to rise. Mature blue-collar Cajun squad primed to make a run at Oklahoma City. By Kevin Foote, staff writer. UL softball coach Jerry Glasgow says his 2021 Ragin' Cajuns might be the oldest team in the history of college softball. With that age comes so many potential benefits for his fourth team as UL's head coach. Not only is it seasoned, but it's deep. Not only is it deep, but it's mature. Not only is it mature, but it's really fast. Glasgow says the fastest one he's had yet. Perhaps most importantly, Glasgow's number 9 ranked Cajuns possess the many lessons learned and perspective gained from the painful March 12, 2020 coronavirus shutdown that ended their season, but also aren't any longer saddled by the grief. Turning the page reveals so many potential solutions to down the road issues, but also one question mark. Is there enough pitching depth behind senior ace Summer Ellison for this team to compete for a national championship? So much of the excitement for the 2020 season was having the 1-2 punch of Ellison and Kleist in the circle. Kleist elected not to return. Quote, hopefully we can find a way to replace Megan Kleist, Glasgow said. I think it's our biggest challenge, end quote. The two top candidates appear to be junior Casey Dixon and sophomore Kendra Lamb. Quote, we feel like we've seen great improvement from Casey Dixon, said Glasgow, who also said Monday Carrie Boswell will get innings. Quote, she's just really worked hard in the offseason and came in throwing well in the fall. She had a good fall and then took it to an even higher level in January. Then Kendra Lamb, who redshirted in 2020, has exceeded every expectation that we had for her in January. She has really thrown well. Lamb gives UL a legitimate power pitcher. Glasgow promises UL fans she's in tremendous shape, but the Australian did walk 15 in 312 per 3 innings in 2019. After a month of intra-squad scrimmages, Sunbelt preseason player of the year shortstop Alyssa Dalton is convinced. Quote, she's been throwing gas lately, Dalton said of Lamb. She's been getting up in the high 60s. I think our staff altogether is killing it, and I'm not worried about them at all. If it's Summer on the mound or anyone else, I know they're going to do what needs to be done, end quote. Glasgow said to expect Lamb and Dixon to get early starters along with Ellison to test the waters. Also, Southpaw Arizona transfer Vanessa Foreman has unique skills. So, quote, we want to see how she contrasts and how she comes in relief behind each one of our other pitchers, end quote. Ellison has seen enough to express confidence in the staff when she's not in the circle. Quote, I believe there's more than one person on this staff that can accomplish that, said Ellison, who 11-1 with a 1.83 ERA last season after going 39-6 with a 1.11 as a junior. Quote, Casey has worked super hard. She puts in a lot of hours. Her confidence has gotten so much better. I feel like she can be a key part to this staff, and the same with Kendra. She's put her foot down and made a name for herself around here, end quote. The only real other questions elsewhere on the squad are good ones to have. Will it be Dalton or former Arizona State shortstop Jade Gutierrez playing shortstop, in which one will move to the third base? We're just going to keep going with it, Glasgow said. I'm liable to do anything. I'm really happy. We've been rotating them consistently throughout the preseason, just like we did in the fall. In my mind, I'm starting to settle in on a lineup that may be a little quicker than I expected to, but I'll wait and we'll see how the pencil works when we write the lineup card out, end quote. The only other question is how often Glasgow will use his depth out of the 12, 13, 14 quality options in his everyday lineup. In addition to the expected starters of Julie Rawls at catcher, freshman Taylor Roman at first base, and senior Caitlin Alderink at second base, there's the super utility option of junior Melissa Mayu just about anywhere but pitcher. Quote, I think you'd have to list Casey Dixon, Kendra Lamb, and Melissa Mayu as the real surprises of January, end quote, Glasgow said. Quote, she, Mayu, is starting to hit the ball really well right now. So she's putting herself in the conversation. We'll see how it plays out, end quote. Sarah Hudek elected to move on in left field, but she's been replaced by Georgia transfer Sierra Bryan. Quote, Bryan has elite speed, Glasgow said. Sarah had an elite arm. She, Bryan, is a freaky athlete. She's not very big, but she's got tremendous power, end quote. Raina O'Neal returns in center, and Arizona transfer Jenna Keene and returner Kendall Talley both figure to see time in right. The designated player options are many, including slugger Bailey Curry, Georgia transfer Justice Mills, Boswell, and Mayu. Quote, I think we'll just keep trying to put our hottest hitters in the lineup, Glasgow said. We're going to have to look at different players to keep them game ready, end quote. Whichever lineup Glasgow selects each day, the Cajuns should be dangerous. Quote, once we came back for spring, I had no doubt in my mind, end quote, Ellison said. Quote, I was like, this team is good. This team is gritty. We're blue collar. We're working hard as we can. I feel like there's so much healthy competition on this team. The team is looking great right now, end quote. Funerals. Funerals today in the Acadiana area. Cynthia Badeau, Evangeline Memorial Gardens Chapel in Carencro at 2 p.m. Glenn Brasser, Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic Church at 2 p.m. Kathleen Ducey, Geezy Ferguson Funeral Home Chapel at 4 p.m. Bernice Fall, St. John Berkman Roman Catholic Church at 2 p.m. Carrie Wanche, St. Michael the Archangel Catholic Church at 2 p.m. This has been Local News Live for February 12, 2021. I've been your reader, Phyllis Grifford. Join us at 9 a.m. Monday through Friday on AOC 1, Cypress Street Radio, or the AOC Community Media channel on YouTube. You can read these stories and more at theadvocate.com and find out how to volunteer and more at aocinc.org.